Thank you for watching this quick video. Today I want to talk about a board mapping tool that I built, or at least the GeoMap object that I used in one of my solutions. I used the Canadian Census data as the base for this screen here. We've loaded it in. I'll walk through the entities, the data readers, the relationships, that kind of stuff, so you can get a feel for how it was developed. And hopefully this is helpful to get an idea of how to use the GeoMap tool. So starting with the end result here, we're looking at a map that represents an area of Canada. This is Vancouver, the west coast of Canada. We have selectors for different elements to filter down our set. As I zoom in on the map, you'll see those groupings will show us how many points are in each region. And as I zoom into different spots, you'll see how they break out into individual blocks. And they each represent counts of different spots, and at the lowest level you'll see circles representing the data points and the relative size. So here we're looking at population numbers. So here I see there's a population of 408 in this area here, there's a population of 690 in this area, and that represents the area around the dot. The relative sizing of the dots gives us some indication of a relative sizing of the numbers. So here this one is it's 1,779. Relative to a much smaller dot adjacent is 408. So you'll see how the size of the dot represents the relative quantity. And when you look at a small set like this, that's where you can see the relative quantity. As you zoom back out, you'll see the groups collapse into numbers. You can control what you want to see and how you want this to be laid out. But let's look at what it looks like behind the scenes. So now if I look at my, I'll start with the relationships, because I think that's going to be more relevant. So let's make everything big. So here, language is all off on its own, but you'll see there's this DBUID block. So this is a very deep tree of the relationships between one block, which is really the grouping of one census block, or as think of it as a residential block within the country of Canada. And from that one block, it rolls up in a couple of different areas. It rolls up into what they call a dissemination area, census tract, census subdivision, places. Places represent cities, areas, electoral districts. So this represents which block or which federal electoral district does this block fit into. And as you go further up, well, maybe the census subdivision, there's a census subdivision type, there's subdivisions, full census divisions, all the way up to provinces and in the country. So it's a fairly complicated relationship here. Now, the nice thing is in the data, we actually get lat-long coordinates. So let's look at the cubes we're using. So we don't have a lot of cubes. Basically lat long, the block count, population. Population is the key metric that we're loading from our data. Number of private dwellings, we also get that. So these are the three metrics in our data source: population, number of private dwellings, and private dwellings occupied by usual residents. Area is just really a property, and this is province names and abbreviation is used for an ease of navigation. If we look at entities, because there's you see the large number of items in the relationship, the entities, most of these are going to be in that one relationship related to a block. So here's the block at the very top, and you'll see how I've got 489, almost 490,000 elements in that one entity, with different numbers related to different number of entities up and down the relationship. So let's take a look at the data reader. So a data reader, I do one data reader for the metadata and then one for the fact, so that they're both using the same file as a source. They're just doing different things. So the metadata will go through and just make sure it captures any new metadata. And then the fact, this second pass goes around the same file and tries to load all of the facts, which in this case there's 3 facts to load. If we take a look at the data reader for at least the metadata here, and I'll pick up my file. So I can look through all the different data points I've got. All these codes are probably meaningless, There's a data dictionary related to the data set that I use. It's public information, so I'll try and put a link to that somewhere. But here I load all of these in one data reader, and it seems to work fine. Don't want to save any changes. From an ETL perspective, is there any ETL to add here? Let's take a look. So if we look at the formulas, we show any formulas. Nope, nothing special happening in the formulas. So we looked at entities, relationships, cubes, the data reader, and this all ends up giving us a data model where I can slice and dice by different pieces of this block hierarchy. If I wanted to just show provincial totals, I could do province-wide stuff. Actually, one thing that's interesting on the cubes. So on my population cube, I've added a bunch of different versions. So what I found is that having different versions at different aggregation points has made performance a lot better. So even though I load the data at the lowest level, which is the block, so this is the first version is the lowest grain. By having these additional versions, other screens that I've set up perform much more effectively. They're much more snappy. So that's it for my Census navigation tool. Thank you for watching.